10,000 veteran soldiers, fresh from the glory of Agincourt, stand frozen before a lethal loop of the River Marne. Their commander is a man who has never known defeat, King Henry V of England, a conqueror recently named heir to the throne of France itself. But here, 35 miles from Paris, a band of die-hard rebels defies him. They hold the town of Meaux, a jagged dagger pointed at Henry's new empire. This 7-month siege will break the city, but it will also break the conqueror himself, unraveling a dynasty at the very moment of its absolute victory. The strategic necessity of this mission is absolute. Meaux is the vital organ of the Dauphinist resistance, controlling the supply routes that feed a starving Paris. As long as this fortress stands, Henry's title as regent remains a hollow claim, contested by the disinherited Dauphin Charles. Henry recognizes that the survival of the Lancastrian dream depends on the total elimination of this defiant stronghold. He views the coming conflict not as a simple battle, but as a necessary act of judicial cleansing. The stakes are nothing less than the sovereign authority of a united Anglo-French crown. The ground trembles on October 6, 1421, as the first English bombards are dragged into position. Henry V surveys the limestone walls of Meaux with a cold, mathematical eye. He is a master of the systematic grind, preferring the slow squeeze of starvation to the bloody gamble of a frontal assault. To his left, the Duke of Exeter and the Earl of Warwick oversee the digging of the first trenches, weaving a web of earthworks to isolate the town from the world. The air fills with the acrid stench of sulfur as the great iron bombards begin to bark. The architecture of resistance here is unique and formidable. The Marne River snakes around the southern side of the town, forming a natural moat for the most sophisticated part of the defense, the Marche. It is an island fortress, a labyrinth of stone bounded by deep water and a man-made canal. Inside, 1,000 mercenaries wait behind walls well stocked with grain and munitions. This configuration forces Henry to split his strength, maintaining separate camps on both sides of a major waterway, exposing his units to the risk of being overwhelmed by unpredictable winter floods. The defense is led by the Bastard of Vauru, a knight of legendary cruelty. In the brutal civil war between the Burgundians and Armagnacs, Vauru has cultivated a reputation for ferocity. Outside the city gates stands the Tree of Vauru, a grim elm, where he hangs anyone who cannot pay an exorbitant ransom. Legend whispers he once tied a pregnant woman to its trunk, leaving her to the wolves. For Henry, this is a moral crusade to cleanse the land of a man who has placed himself outside the laws of God. Nature proves to be a more vicious enemy than the French. The winter of 1421 descends with a fury not seen in a century, marking the onset of the Little Ice Age. The Marne overflows its banks, turning the English siege lines into a freezing quagmire of grey clay and jagged ice. Wood for fires becomes a luxury. Men sleep in freezing trenches, their breath ghosting in the air while the river roars against their earthworks. Across the channel, the Thames freezes solid, but here, the damp and cold are silent assassins claiming the soldiers. Throughout this environmental crucible, Henry V remains a stabilizing force, personally supervising the positioning of every gun. He refuses the warmth of Paris, choosing instead to share the misery of the trenches with his common archers. His legendary determination, the very quality that brought him through Agincourt, now becomes his greatest liability. He believes his physical endurance is as ironclad as his legal claim to the throne. But as he moves through the muck, he is unaware that he is walking through a breeding ground for pathogens that do not care for crowns. In the crowded, unsanitary English camp, a microscopic enemy begins its crawl through the ranks. Dysentery, the bloody flux, spreads like wildfire. It is an inflammatory disease of the gut, characterized by severe abdominal cramps and painful fever. Pathogens thrive in the contaminated water, claiming far more lives than French arrows. Medieval surgeons are powerless against this invisible rot. High-ranking veterans begin to fall, and eventually, the illness begins to sap the strength of the king himself. He masks his pain with royal stoicism, refusing to show weakness to his enemies. The war moves beneath the surface in the War of the Moles. English miners hollow out saps, horizontal veins of destruction aimed at the foundations of the great towers. The air in these tunnels is thick with the smell of earth and the sweat of desperate men. They shore up the cavities with timber props, waiting to pack them with brushwood and resin. Once ignited, The supports burn away, and the weight of the masonry above brings the world crashing down in a muffled roar, creating rubble ramps for the English infantry to storm. Above ground, the English siege train demonstrates the clinical perfection of 15th century artillery. Massive wrought iron bombards, forged in the local bloomeries, hurl limestone balls that weigh as much as a man. Gunners work in a haze of black powder smoke, mixing their volatile ingredients, saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, on site to prevent them from separating. These grosses bombardiers are complemented by smaller fowlers used for high-velocity fire. It is a scientific bombardment that confirms the era of the High Curtain Wall is coming to a violent, shattered end. In December, tragedy strikes the English leadership. A French gunstone strikes 17-year-old John Cornwall while he stands beside his father, Sir John, a hero of Agincourt. The boy's head is gone in an instant. The elder Cornwall, caked in his son's blood, decries the war as contrary to God and reason. He abandons the king, swearing never to fight again. The moral cost of the siege is beginning to rattle the English knightly class, as the war for a rightful inheritance starts to look like a senseless slaughterhouse. As 1422 dawns, news arrives from England offering a glimmer of hope. On December 6th, Queen Catherine has given birth to a son and heir, the future Henry VI. The king has a successor, an anchor for the Lancastrian line. This news should be a triumph, yet it carries a heavy weight of irony. Henry V has never seen his child, and as his illness worsens, the possibility that he ever will begins to fade. The warrior king is fighting for a future he might never inhabit, securing a crown for a baby who remains a world away. By March 1422, the citizens on the northern bank are reduced to catastrophe. Henry's blockade is absolute, and starvation has reached its breaking point. Inhabitants have been forced to consume their horses, dogs, and eventually vermin. Recognizing that no relief is coming, the demoralized citizens open the gates on March 9th. But the victory is partial. The Bastard of Vauru and his hardliners retreat into the island fortress of the Marche, burning the bridge spans behind them. Henry must begin the grind again, relocating his heavy guns as his strength fails. The final 2 months are a grueling contest of wills against the island's stronghold. Henry reorganizes his siege works, targeting the district within the river loop. The English army is threadbare, thinned by smallpox and the relentless flux. Yet, the king's discipline remains unshakable. He personally supervises the construction of a bridge of boats to facilitate supplies, his face a gaunt mask of duty. He refuses to let a city dictate the terms of war. As spring heat brews new disease in the canal, Henry remains in the saddle, driving his men to the limit. Psychological warfare echoes across the water as a French trumpeter named Horace takes his post. Every time the king is sighted, Horace blares a mocking tune, a taunt designed to irritate the English sovereign. The sound is a constant reminder that the garrison's spirit remains unbroken. Henry, his body gripped by agonizing stomach cramps and raging fever, listens in silence. The trumpeter's tune becomes the soundtrack to the king's decline, a sharp defiance cutting through the roar of bombards. Henry vows that when the walls fall, the music will stop forever. The end arrives on May 10th of 1422. Facing starvation and an English storming, the garrison mutinies against Vauru and accepts unconditional surrender. Henry's justice is as cold as the winter. He has no intention of showing mercy to men who have cost him 7 months and thousands of lives. The strategic dagger is finally broken, and the map of the kingdom is redrawn in Henry's favor. But as the king tries to mount his horse for the next march, he collapses. The bloody flux has done what French steel could not. It has conquered the conqueror. Henry's justice is swift and lethal. The Bastard of Vauru is dragged through the streets and taken to his infamous elm tree. There, the executioner's blade ends the life of the man who dared defy a king. Horace the trumpeter is also silenced, his mocking tunes ending on the gallows. The English banners fly over a shattered town, and Paris is finally secure. It is a total tactical victory, but the conqueror is a hollow shell. Henry has won his prize, but he has sacrificed the very health required to rule it. Henry V is carried out of Meaux in a litter, a slow, agonizing funeral procession. The journey toward the Château de Vincennes is a landscape of irony as the dying king is carried through the territories he spent a decade winning. Dehydration and intestinal damage have left him too weak to stand. his body a cage of pain. He passes through villages that witness the physical dissolution of the man who promised a new age of unity. The king, who once marched across France, is now a passenger in his own kingdom, measured by the rhythmic swaying of the litter. The walls of Vincennes offer a final sanctuary. On August 31st, 1422, at the age of 35, King Henry V takes his final breath. He has spent his life in pursuit of a united empire, yet he dies, having never held his son or worn the crown of France. His end is abrupt and unglamorous. The hero of Agincourt is gone, struck down by bacteria thriving in the filth of his own siege works. The sword of the Lancastrian dynasty is broken just as it reached its sharpest point, leaving a void no regent can fill. The aftermath is a slow unraveling. The accession of an infant to dual thrones is a political disaster, leading to factionalism and the eventual horrors of the Wars of the Roses. Military momentum bleeds away, and within a decade, Joan of Arc will rise to exploit the vulnerability Henry left behind. The Siege of Meaux remains a monument to the irony of victory. It was the crucible where the Lancastrian Empire reached its zenith and the graveyard where its future was buried. The great conqueror was conquered by the very land he sought to own. History is a relentless cycle of blood and fate. If you found this journey through the iron and mud of Meaux compelling, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We want to hear from you. How do you view the legacy of the warrior king who won a city but lost a kingdom? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join our community as we continue to uncover the hidden truths of the past. Your engagement helps us bring these cinematic stories to life.